One of the aspects of these freshwater mussels that's particularly interesting is their adaptations to living in their environment. In this case, to living in a relatively fast-moving river environment. And one of the challenges faced by an animal like this is to remain burrowed in the substrate at the bottom of the river, despite the movement of water. And so there are a couple of different kinds of adaptations that you can see in the shells, in the morphology of the shells, to this issue of remaining static despite the water moving around them. Two of those adaptations are illustrated here, and they're a really good example because they actually show one case where it's probably an ancestral state that evolved maybe once in an early species, and then that kind of feature is shared among all of its descendants who are closely related. And another example in the same sampling effort here, in the same part of the river, where you have two species that are not closely related that have evolved similar morphologies independently. So we call that convergent evolution. And I'll show you this example here. So on these two mussels, these are two different species. On the left, the maple leaf, and on the right, the pimpleback. And you can see why it's called that. It's covered in bumps. There's actually another one in the same general group here, warty back, got a name, also illustrating the bumps. This kind of bump helps to keep them anchored in the gravel or the sand at the bottom. You can see where they've been burrowed in. And this is a case where these are two species that are closely related. They're not necessarily going to remain in the same genus. There will be some revision, but they are a clade. They are a single evolutionary group, share a common ancestor, and the group is actually comprised of many species, and they all tend to have some form of bumps like that. So this is probably an ancestral feature that evolved early on and is maintained in all of the descendants in that group. A very different situation over here, where we have the white heel splitter and the pink heel splitter. This is a shell, this is a living one. We found both of these in the same area. They look superficially very similar. In particular, they have this adaptation of a wing, which helps to deflect water and help them remain in their position in the current. These two species are not closely related. So this is an example where the ancestor that is shared fairly distantly among them did not have this feature, and this has evolved independently in both groups. So this would be an example of convergent evolution, whereas this is the maintenance of an ancestral condition.
Okay.
So here's two heel splitters.
That's a lot of mussels.
On the left, the pink heel splitter. On the right, the white heel splitter. So outside, they look fairly similar. Of course, they're not closely related, as we talked about. But inside, there's a very pink color on this pink heel splitter, whereas on the white, it's very white. So inside, it's not that easy to mistake which one you're looking at, even though on the outside they're quite similar.